So question number 1 is, state officials took action to flatten the curve on the pandemic deaths by restricting tourism, shutting down schools and businesses, restricting large gatherings, which has compromised the state's economic health. In May, the legislature added $1.3 billion to the rainy day fund. And as a state legislator, how would you allocate the funds to rescue the economy? We're facing an $800 million shortfall because of the unemployment insurance. So the question will be Kobe, Scott, Lisa, Alan. We'll start with you, Kobe.
1 second, Flora.
Yes.
How much time are you giving for an answer? Is it 2 minutes or 1 minute?
2 minutes. 2 minutes each.
Thank you.
Kobe?
Good. Okay. So first and foremost, we need to use this money that we got from the CARES Act that's currently in the rainy day fund to make sure we can continue to pay the unemployment claims for our struggling working class families and really create more accessible loans available to our small businesses who may have not been able to get the other PPP loans that the federal government put out, really to just make sure they're not forced to close and lay off more employees. That being said, $1.3 billion only breaks down to about $915.49 per capita, which is really not enough to rescue an economy the way that we would like to see it happen, but it can sustain it. And I think the biggest step we can take to really overcome the economic difficulties in the short run we're experiencing now is by taking more steps to reopen our tourism economy. While it's nice to diversify, and I think we really need to, currently we just need more money coming into the state. And this will naturally bring more money into the state. With the current 14-day mandatory quarantine, the only people who are visiting us or arriving are those with family here that they can stay with for an extended period of time, and the few tourists who come with the intention of breaking quarantine anyway. Really, if we want the mandatory quarantine to not sway so many people away from coming here, we need to reduce it to 1 day. So more tourists would come, giving us, really they'll be giving up 1 day of their trip to experience paradise, which is I think really doable for a lot of people who would consider visiting here again. Really to do this safely, we need to make sure that we use the latest testing methods to pre-test before departure, test upon arrival, and mandate a 1 day quarantine, which is a lot shorter than the 14-day quarantine. And this would allow the rapid COVID-19 test to determine if the visitor has the virus. And this test is being used in Texas, and it's a simple saliva test. It's not 100% perfect, but it would be a huge step forward in reopening our economy, getting more money here while also keeping people with the virus out. This would not be would be a complete travel ban is the only way to completely stop this. However, we can't afford that anymore. We need people back to work, and we still need to take our proper precautions with PPE and all of the social distancing. But by reopening and just having a 1 day quarantine, it would entice a lot more people to come here rather than solely working with a mere $1.3 billion in rainy day funds. Thank you guys.
The next person is Scott.
I would use the $1.3 billion for housing, food, and healthcare. First, I want to say the legislature let us down by putting that money into the rainy day fund and then taking a 3-week recess. Why do we have a rainy day fund if not for times like right now? It's not just raining. We're in the middle of a downpour, and our legislators took a vacation. Our communities need this money, and they need it yesterday. So first, I would go with housing. We need to keep people from falling into houselessness. Everyone knows how big of an issue houselessness is in our district. And in the short and medium term, we do need to address the people who are currently houseless. But more important than that right now is keeping new people from falling into houselessness, from experiencing that trauma and maybe falling into a situation that they can't get out of. So we need to earmark some of that money for charities like the Aloha United Way, which can pay people's rent on a short-term basis while they're laid off. Second, we need to distribute food. So the state's done an okay job at this. We've had 16 food distributions, distributed a little more than 1 million pounds of food at about $1 per pound. So it's a really cost-effective way to make sure people are getting through the day, especially families with kids who normally get their meals for free at school, but schools are closed. So we need to increase our food distribution a lot. And last, healthcare. Right now, testing needs to be free. If people need hospital stays because they have COVID, it needs to be free. We can't let the COVID-19 crisis send more people into medical debt or medical bankruptcy. And we can't let people be afraid to go get a test because they don't have the money. This is a public health crisis. Anyone who gets COVID can pass it on to anyone else. So we need to make sure that everyone for free.
15 seconds.
If we make sure that everyone for free can go get tested, we can beat this more quickly.
Thank you very much, Scott. Next is Lisa.
Okay, so basically, we're going to be spending a lot of money, and we have a chance to use this transition and our recovery to change the way our economy works. So, for example, we can lift up women by making sure some of those, the aid and is directed towards women-owned businesses and industries with high proportions of women in it. We can also start to reduce our dependency on tourism, which is not to say to get rid of tourism, but just to diversify. Again, where do we invest those funds? So two promising areas are local renewable energy, which is something I've fought for a long time, and local food production, because these are two things that we spend money on anyways. We already spend money on them. If we spend that money and keep it here in Hawaii, keep that money at home, it will help us. There's actually a lot of green jobs already identified that are ready to go. And if we invest in basically providing the salaries for those jobs, we can get a lot of things accomplished at the same time as our recovery, right? Restore natural resources, restore farmland, make ourselves more resilient to climate change. We want to get our shovel-ready construction jobs going. I am not torn between paying public workers and helping small business, nonprofits, and unemployed individuals. I think we need to do it all. We do have access to borrow funds. Hawaii has excellent, the best credit rating. And we may do better on the open market, but there's also available. And this is what we need to do so we don't have to make a choice between our teachers, the people who actually process our unemployment claims, and the people that need it. So we do need to just continue we need to fund our unemployment beyond July and help with housing. I think I saw the figure over 30% of adults missed a rent or mortgage payment last month. So these are things we need to work on and use that fund and borrow if we need to stimulate our economy, or we will have a worse, longer recession to get our way out of.
Thank you, Lisa. Alan.
Thank you. Addressing your question, when the federal government gave CARES Act money to the state, it said to do two things: spend it on COVID relief and do it before the end of the year. And our legislature has failed us because they've decided that number two, waiting and the timeline that they have, is more important than number one, which is COVID relief. That's what that money is for. We're not talking about how we're going to invest it in future economies. What we need is stabilization right now, and stabilization in the areas that are in most need. That's providing food, that's providing wages and unemployment benefits. So we need to strengthen our unemployment benefit backlog, get that taken care of, get those funds out, make sure it's replenished so that if people need that money, and we know they do, that money is available for them. Second, expanding SNAP, or giving money to the Department of Education, who's extended their to-go food pickup for families who can provide meals for their children. We need to expand those programs so that families aren't worried about what food is going to be eaten by their children on a day-to-day basis. And the third thing is going to be making sure that money goes to either grants or loans at low to no interest to our are working class businesses, right? Not to big corporations that qualify for the PPP loans. And we've seen that large corporations and small businesses are competing for that same pool. So we really need to make sure that if the state is not providing that available funds to our small businesses, and they're fighting out with large corporations for a small piece of the pie, you know, there's been reports that 20 to 25% of our small businesses are going to go out of business by the end of the year. And again, our legislators are waiting to see just how much struggle we can afford. And we've already struggled too much. So that's what we need to do with that rainy day fund money. And we need to do it now.